were admitted to the Senate Intelligence Committee, but thousands more have since been revealed. Ultimately, FBI documents disclosed 6 major programs. FBI operatives were directed to disrupt meetings of targeted groups, spread rumors, inflame disagreements over what people normally fight over, money, politics, race, gender, sex, and to exacerbate rivalries and jealousy, to lead activists into unnecessary danger, and to set them up for false prosecutions. False news stories, forged documents, and anonymous letters and phone calls, as well as pressure on landlords and their employers, make up just some of the strategies used against activists. The major violence of the domestic terrorist campaign was directed at the black nationalist and American Indian movements. These individuals were readily imprisoned on false charges or assassinated. British Commander Frank Kitson first codified counterinsurgency operations theory in his book Low-Intensity Operations, Subversion, Insurgency, and Peacekeeping, and he insists that infiltration and psychological operations be mounted against dissident groups in normal times before any mass movement can develop. These tactics were adopted into COINTELPRO against American citizens in peacetime, with considerable energy spent ensuring that the different progressive groups did not link up and cooperate. Specifically, the anti-war movement, composed of suburban white youth, and the black nationalist movement. There was also a major effort to preclude African American leaders from linking up with leaders in Africa. Infiltration of the KKK by the FBI reached 10 to 20% of its membership at the height of the civil rights struggle, and these assets, along with neo-Nazi party members, were used to attack civil rights workers and activists. COINTEL operations are presently being incorporated into the development of microwave and radio frequency radiation weapons. Dissidents that in the past were visibly attacked or assassinated in a traditional manner are now targeted for elimination using electromagnetic weapons. These internal dissidents are used as human guinea pigs and experimental subjects in terminal experiments that are designed to force a suicide, incarceration, or premature death due to the effects of ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. These political assassinations are accomplished with invisible bullets that leave no obvious injuries. The driving of a target to suicide using microwave hearing as well as other techniques is perfectly deniable because these individuals are tormented invisibly, unable to seek help from the psychiatric community due to the symptoms of the attacks mimicking symptoms of schizophrenia that naturally affect several million Americans. Thus, the intelligence agencies have achieved perfect deniability for their crimes. CIA blowback. If the U.S. intelligence agencies are currently engaged in war crimes using directed energy weapons, it would be logical to expect a pattern of prior behaviors that exhibit similar criminal activity. It is certain that the United States has destabilized dozens of countries and overthrown their elected governments. Just how many countries is uncertain. In Iran in 1953, the Eisenhower administration joined forces with British intelligence to overthrow the government of Iran, which was seeking a larger share of its country's oil revenues. CIA Director Allen Dulles and Kermit Roosevelt, the son of FDR, were able to direct Iranian army officers in a coup to overthrow Mossadegh, the elected government, and reinstall the fictitious monarchy of the Shah. The Shah immediately granted British Petroleum a 40% share of the oil concession, and American firms received 40% as a reward for their participation. The overthrow of Mossadegh emboldened the CIA and became a blueprint for future destabilization operations. Mossadegh represented the legitimate aspirations of a nationalist democracy that was thwarted in the name of anti-communism. The resulting chaos and radicalization of Iran is a direct result of interference in the internal affairs of that nation, what is referred to as blowback, the unintended negative consequences of covert actions against foreign elected governments. The Shah was described in a confidential CIA report as a dangerous sociopath who suffered from a dominating father and a sense of the illegitimacy of his mandate to rule. Savak was the name of the Shah's feared secret police, set up with the help of the CIA. The excesses of the Shah and the American selected and trained Savak led to the emergence of the Ayatollah Khomeini and a hostile regime that views the U.S. as a force for evil in the world, hence the litany of referring to the United States as the Great Satan. Guatemala. In 1954, the CIA accepted and carried out a proposal from United Brands, Chiquita Banana, to overthrow the Guatemalan government, which was the only democratically elected government Guatemala had ever had. United Brands and the CIA replaced that government with 40 years of bloodshed under a series of barbaric right-wing dictators. U.S. taxpayers continue to fund these regimes under the repeated threat that if they do not, the Guatemalan people will fall prey to communism. A mere 2% of the population owned 72% of the land. 90% of the landowners were confined to the poorest 15% of the land. United Brands owned the railroads, the ports, and vast tracts of some of the most productive land on earth. Guatemalan President Arbenz had won the election with 65% of the vote in 1950. He tried to fulfill his mandate, which was land reform and a minimum wage modeled on FDR's efforts in the U.S. He seized the largest land holdings, including his own family's, and distributed 1.5 million acres to 100,000 families. The land was paid for in 25-year interest-bearing bonds, perfectly within the guidelines of the Kennedy-era Alliance for Progress program, or U.S. programs in El Salvador and Chile. The only difference were the investments by United Brands and the political influence they could bring to bear on the Arbenz government. In 1966, a swell of revolution brought a full-scale U.S.-sponsored counterinsurgency response program, including arms, advisors, and even Green Berets. A State Department study analyzed the program years later and stated, quote, "To eliminate a few hundred guerrillas, the government killed perhaps 10,000 Guatemalan peasants." Father Ronald Hennessy wrote of one event among many. July 14, 1982, the local military commander sent word for all the people of the village of Penitenac to be assembled for his 11 o'clock arrival. At 4 p.m., all of the men, with their hands tied behind their backs, were escorted by the soldiers into one house, shot, stabbed, and piled one on top of the other and covered with burnable items from the house, which were sprinkled with gasoline and set on fire. The women were treated the same as the men, differing only in that some had live babies on their backs when they were stacked for burning. The other children were tied, one to another, and pulled alive into the flames of a third house by the soldiers. In September of 1981, an association of Guatemalan coroners had complained that they couldn't keep up with the demand for autopsies because violent deaths had increased so rapidly, 50% higher each month than the last. Michael Deaver was instrumental in the election of Ronald Reagan in 1980, and one of his three close advisors, along with Ed Meese and James Baker. His public relations firm, Deaver and Hannaford, took on various right-wing Central and South American landowners and businessmen as clients, among them a group of Guatemalans.
Was not a Guatemalan government. It was a foreign government controlled by foreigners.
And that happened just here in the continent.
Right here in America.
Iraq. In Iraq in 1958, General Abdel Karim Qasem led a coup, took power, and proclaimed a republic. He legalized the Communist Party and decreed land reform, granting autonomy to the Kurds. CIA Director Allen Dulles declared Iraq, quote, "the most dangerous spot in the world," and in 1963 the CIA-supported Ba'ath Party overthrew Qasem. The Ba'ath Party shared power until 1968, when the CIA again instigated a coup that culminated in the rise of Saddam Hussein. Hussein had been on the CIA payroll since his early 20s. In 1980, Saddam invaded Iran in fear of the potential Iranian